Welcome, my little devils, to another wonderful episode of the Scary Movie Project, the podcast where we talk about scary movies and where the power of Christ compels us to talk about The Exorcist. I am your host, Matt, and today we do talk about 1973's... Oh my God, Shai Korman is here. Do you guys know Shai Korman from Friday Night Movie Podcast? We did a great episode on Evil Dead. This guy is Mr. Evil Dead. He's Evil Dead the musical is your thing, right?
Yeah, right. I go deep. Even into the musical.
So we're going to talk... You want to talk 1973, The Exorcist?
Yeah, well, I was just wandering
what a coincidence.
The Georgetown campus, and seeing all these places in real life reminds me how much the parts that aren't obvious scare me in this movie. The parts where Ellen Burstyn's walking through and catching the priest out of the corner of her eye.
Okay.
The parts where the priest is walking with the flowers through this courtyard that we're standing in right here.
That's right.
There's something so haunting. And, I mean, I'm curious what you think. The memes and the familiarity of Possessed Kid almost is like
Pea soup, head spinning, scary movie. Scary movie 2 where he crawls in bed. Mom, what are you doing in here? Like, those are great.
Exactly. And so what was fun for me was to watch those moments that were more subtle and have those scare the life out of me. I mean, I think about Father Marin, the wild dogs barking, like all of that. It's just, whoa, this is like shivers up my spine.
No, for sure. So 1973 Exorcist, right? So William Peter Blatty writes the novel earlier, and a couple years before. He was writing comedy. It was going nowhere for him. He writes this, becomes a big hit. They make the film. Friedkin makes the film. He sometimes claims it's not a horror film. I talk about that. But I think that it's obviously one of the top 5 scariest movies ever, top 3 probably, right? So we open up in Iraq, actually, with Father Marin, who's obviously older. He's taking medication. He's not in great shape. It's dirty. It's dusty. It's hot. And these great scenes. It opens with that great, the imams with the prayer, and the title comes up, and you're like, where am I? This is a scary... And like the dogs and seeing the statue of Pazuzu and
the statue, and to me, I got this like ominous feeling of how big this haunting is, right?
Yeah.
Like, I imagine it was just going to start in Georgetown,
right?
But if it's starting all the way in Iraq, and you're seeing this showdown, this moment where Father Marin knows something's wrong, and he's looking at the Pazuzu statue, and the lights coming in, and the wind is swirling, and later I find out that wind is a symbol of Pazuzu. You realize that this is not just a haunting that's happening in one little place with one little girl. This is like,
it's powerful. Big.
You're not just escaping this. Yeah. And to me, that was what I got, this like feeling of vertigo from being in Iraq. And there's the guy with the eye.
Yeah, that drives by in the carriage or whatever. I don't like that. That scene really freaks me out for sure. That's a good kind of startup. Then we shift into Georgetown, right? And we go to the shot across the stairs. Chris McNeil is an actress. She's in town shooting a film. She's renting the house. Her daughter Reagan is there. Father's not around. Strange things start to happen in the house, noises, whatever. We find out she starts playing around with a Ouija board. Reagan does.
Which, that's the first lesson of this movie.
She's sitting there playing around with it.
Don't play with it.
Please don't play with Ouija boards, guys. She's playing around with it. And she's saying how her friend Captain Howdy is here. And she's like, oh, who's Captain Howdy? Oh, he's my friend. And we don't know. And then we go to that dinner party scene that she's having. Everyone's playing the piano. We're having a grand time. And Reagan comes down in her nightgown, and she just goes to the bathroom all over the floor and tells that astronaut, you're going to die up there. And then they're having the scene, remember, she takes him and she's giving her the bath later. And it's like, something's wrong here. Something's wrong here.
And to me, that scene is so haunting, right?
Yeah.
Ominous statement from kid.
Yeah.
Very scary.
Yeah.
And that kicks off this theme of losing control and losing bodily control. Like Reagan is losing control from the inside. The spirit is coming from within her and around her and manipulating her.
Yeah.
But then that leads to the doctors and the mother and everybody who don't want to really believe there's anything supernatural happening around, putting her through these horrific tests, which, like, as a parent, the idea of not knowing what's wrong with your kid, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
And then the actual test, like an MRI in 1973, who wants to get that?
Well, the banging noises and the machine, the way they spin, and the tests when they're pulling the blood and it's flying out of her neck, and you can see her like genuinely wincing in pain. Even just an MRI today is not fun, and I can't even imagine doing it. By the way, do you know that there was apparently a serial killer that an actual that played a medical tech in this film. This is not an urban legend. This is a true story.
I did a deep dive afterwards. And that is pretty terrifying, right? I hope he wasn't inspired by the movie. I hope. I mean, meaning I don't want a
I don't
movie
know the whole rest of the story.
Meaning I hope that if he was going to be bad, he was already bad.
He was already bad.
That Pazuzu wasn't inside him.
Like a heavy metal turned my child into a murderer. Right. Nothing like that.
Although absolutely terrifying.
Oh my God. So yeah, that was scary stuff. And you're trying to figure out what's going on with her, and weird things are happening, and that's when the noises start happening, and she's starting to weird things. She's kind of flipping up in her bed, and it's not good. And you're wondering, where is this going to go from here, right?
Absolutely.
It's frightening. So essentially, all these tests happen, and we realize at this point, medical stuff is not going to really do anything anymore. And that's when the faith stuff starts to come into play, right?
Absolutely. And I think faith and demons is just such a great recipe for things that are terrifying.
Yeah.
Because when you come to this priest, who is a psychiatrist, so he is a man of science.
He is. Yeah.
And he is having his own crisis of faith. I love the decision that he's got to be the one to go on the journey and figure this out. And also the fact that he has this vulnerability because of his mother, right? And
that's a big part of that story, right?
He has this element of weakness that Pazuzu can exploit, is the reason why he's the one who's able to do it. And I think that's such an interesting conversation about faith, because it's almost like faith can't exist without doubt. Right? If your faith is so crystal clear all the time, right, then how strong is that faith? It's almost unquestioned. But if you have doubt, if you have something that's challenging it, if you're wrestling with it, right, if you're wrestling with it, I feel like in some ways that makes you a stronger adversary for, in this case, it's Pazuzu, it's the demon. And I think when I guess people have seen the movie at this point, but when you get
we're full of spoilers, so yeah.
When you get to the end, his vulnerability, his willingness to let Pazuzu exploit his weakness is how he...
Well, remember that line, "You're not my mother." Remember he's screaming that, and you can see the demon's clearly gotten to him at this point, and Marin has to tell him, "Stop, the demon's a liar, don't believe anything the demon says," right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. And I think there's another element, now that you mentioned that, it makes me think of when they talk about how the demon mixes truth with lies, which is,
I love that line.
In our society now, when we're talking about people mixing truth, and whether it's AI and digital lies, or whether it's just rhetorical lies, that's always the recipe. You need a little bit of truth for it to work and to seduce people. Right. And I think again that comes back to this whole thing with faith and challenging faith, and I think it's a really powerful way that you don't have to be a person of faith to see. And I think that's another good thing about it. A guy who has doubts is more relatable to the audience. You don't have to be a person of faith to be on his side in this, and appreciate that he's going through something very difficult.
Yeah, he's having his doubts of his faith, and that's what it's all about. He's not sure about his faith. He's having these crises, right, and his personal life and everything. And this moment comes along, and it's just wow, yeah.
I also, another question I have, or thing I think about when I'm watching the movie, is the legacy of this movie. It looms as large as Pazuzu, right? As large as the demon. I mean, there's so many things we watch today that simply don't exist. Every nun, Conjuring, Black Phone, whatever. I haven't even seen all those movies. But I'm just saying, every time you see something like that, because this is even, I guess Rosemary's Baby is around the same time, and is The Omen around the same time?
68?
Okay.
Rosemary's Baby?
Okay, so it's a little before. So to me that grounded haunting of babies and little kids, right? Really,
demonic stuff.
They crystallize it. And I also think there's something about the way they shot stuff in the 70s that just makes it a lot scarier the way it is.
Yeah, it's a great film. So you are a great film producer, and you're making stuff. So where does everybody find all the awesome stuff that you're working on? You got something really cool about to happen too, right?
All right, cool. So there's a bunch. So first of all, every week my sisters and I talk about movies and television and insult each other on the Friday Night Movie Podcast.
I love listening to you guys.
But we also are producers. We have Jewish summer camp comedy called The Floaters that is doing its festival run right now.
Yes.
If you're watching this, hopefully by Halloween, we're going to have our DC premiere on November 6th. And you can check out thefloatersmovie.com, and that will have all the information about where you can get tickets. We're screening as part of, speaking of faith, the J by J Jewish Film and Music Festival of Washington, D.C.
Love it.
And it's going to be a lot of fun.
Love it.
No,
awesome.
No demons, though.
No demons. No demons for everybody. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate you. Now, but of course, we have a lot more of this movie to talk about. So we got way more in this movie to talk about, and we're on all these great places, right? So I had to bring my friend Matt Blazi with me, who's the author of 8 Days in the Woods, the making of the Blair Witch Project, the tour guide of the Blair Witch Experience. Matt, thank you for coming to help me talk more Exorcist with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I love coming out on locations for movies and talking about them.
I know you do. You're big for set jetter. So we were talking last time with Shai about how, all the tests have been done to her, so much is happening, and at this point she's now got to go to faith, and she's got to go to a priest, and she's got to ask about that awkward scene of, so how do you go about getting an exorcism? And he says, well, you got to get a time machine and go back in time because it doesn't happen anymore. And she's like, well, I think my daughter is possessed. And this starts that whole piece of where this is going to go, and this is where the audience is now like, okay, this isn't some religious stuff that I don't understand. Like, what are you thinking when you're watching that part, like the first time you're actually going to see this, right? Do you remember watching that for the first time?
I don't recall watching it for the first time, but I recall as I got older how long it takes the movie to become a religious type horror film. And it's when they finally exhausted everything. And it's funny when you go back and look and, the doctor says it's nerves, or they're constantly putting stuff in her neck and doing all of these tests that look archaic now, where they would just throw them in an MRI machine.
Right.
They couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, and obviously it's supernatural. But The Exorcist is as much a story about Reagan's mom as it is about Reagan. And I think people forget most of the movie is carried by Ellen Burstyn, and you're watching her deal with this.
Yes, mother's battle with it,
When she finally gets frustrated that she's not getting help from the doctors, they're telling her to go to a psychologist, and then finally it's, well, we've erased everything else. Now we have to go to religion, which isn't something that they seem to be into. They don't really come from a religious background.
No, not at all.
Which I think at that point, most movies blended the main character having some sort of faith or some sort of religious background to now where she's an actress, she's in Hollywood, and she doesn't have this religious background, and now she's got to reluctantly go to the Catholic Church and say, I think my daughter's possessed, which to her it seems just as weird to say as it is for the priest to hear in, at that point, modern times. And when you go back and think about it, it's like, okay, this is a last-ditch effort. And to have a movie be that smart to not immediately go to that, like they are uncovering what is happening to her and they keep dismissing it. And trying to apply a real-life medical situation to this possession, it is, you get frustrated with her.
Yes.
And
that's
as the audience is now, we're like, let's get into it. And The Exorcist really draws this out. It's a very slow film until you get to about the last, quarter or third. But watching Ellen finally accept that I think this is possession, and we as the audience know that.
That's
right. At this point, we have to go on this journey with her and watching her talk through this with Father Karras, because she doesn't believe it just as much as he doesn't believe it. And she's thinking, well, you're the priest, you should know about this. And he goes, you know much about exorcism as most priests. He's, we follow his journey where, he's got a potential loss of faith with the death of his mom and being a psychologist. And she kind of points that out to him, to where they have this back and forth where it's like he wants to disprove it because he doesn't want to have to deal with it because of his lack of faith at this point in his life.
That's right.
But then I think Ellen Burstyn's character is, I don't care what it is, I just need to know and let's get it out. There's no scene of trying to give all this exposition of, oh, well, it's this demon or it's this. They don't really go into a lot of what possessions have been.
Right.
You know, he talks
Cases
about, holy water, and he's, it's tap water. You know, he's trying to disprove it as much as she's just trying to...
They don't want to do it. They really don't. I mean, it's not something they want to do.
I mean, at that point, in 1972 or 74, whenever it was, when was the last exorcism that had been performed that any of them had known about? None of them had done that. It's
archaic. I mean, it's not something that happens.
They might as well have a scene if they made it today of them going into the old library section and they open it up and they dust off the book and open it up, how to perform an exorcism.
Right.
Because it wasn't something that anyone was prepared for, nor is it something that they really want to do because they don't know.
No, they don't.
There hasn't been that many documented cases of it.
Nope.
And we live in this modern world where science has leapt over faith, heads and tails, far ahead, and she's dealing with her daughter. She just wants whatever it is. She doesn't care what it is. She just wants answers.
How do I figure? Right. How do I get to the end?
And Father Karras probably is, I would say, the best type of priest to do that, to where he is sort of skeptical and he's not going all in on, well, it's this religious thing. It's we've read these religious texts. He's just as much a skeptic, and he's not trying to disprove it. I always felt he wanted to have it be disproved, because he didn't know what to do with it.
No, he doesn't know.
And following their journey in that latter half of the film with their relationship was, I think, just as good character development as him and Kinderman.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the Father Karras character really is an anchor on this film, because you're watching the movie as much through his eyes as you are through Ellen Burstyn's.
Sure.
Because you two skeptics that are going to have to believe in something that they don't want to, but then they also have no idea how to combat it or approach it.
So it's interesting because at this point, this is now when we start to see all the scenes that made this movie famous, right? Her flipping up and down in the bed, her head spinning, the masturbating with the crucifix, the furniture moving. So this is when all this stuff starts, and they're trying to verify, the voices, I am no one. They need the genuine reasons for possession and stuff like that. So that's always interesting. And that's the part to get everybody crazy, right? Because, oh my God, what is this little girl doing?
Well, you don't expect it. There's almost no build up to those iconic scenes.
Yeah.
You got a little bit beforehand where she's using some foul language and peeing on the carpet, and then it just all of a sudden it hits you.
It happens.
And you're like, whoa, what is going on?
Yeah.
And that's where the movie really starts to pay off. This massive buildup that we've had for about an hour or so. And when we finally see them and you hear Burke Denning's voice coming out of Reagan's mouth, and you realize, oh my God, she's the one that killed him.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's on. And I'll tell you what, one of the absolute scariest scenes to me in a film to this day is when Father Karras comes to the house and Ellen Burstyn's assistant takes him upstairs. And she opens up her pajamas.
Oh, help me.
Yep. And when that violin or whatever hits and it cuts back and the words, it still gives me chills even talking about it.
It's terrible.
That is to me probably the scariest scene in the whole film, because that music hits and it builds and it says, help me. So it's like she is in there.
Yeah.
And you finally get to see Reagan really for the first time in a long time in the film.
Yes.
There's just this moment where you know that, okay, she's in there, there's something happening. And then we obviously get to where she's physically getting more deformed. She's tied up on the bed. She spits the pea soup at Father Karras, which I still think gets people to this day.
It's great. I mean, what can you do not to love about that scene?
And it's just like you're on this ride at this point. At this point, we've been going up, and then boom, we hit it for the last 30, 40 minutes or so. And that's the great thing, is that build-up, it has an excellent payoff, but it doesn't change the tone. It stays as serious as it can. Yeah. It stays dark. Yeah. And the sound in that film, when Karras is listening to her speak, I am no one. Yeah. It's when you get to that point, you're just as scared audibly as you are visually. And,
Yes.
and I think that's what helps keep the film so popular, is because I think a lot of people forget that first hour is nothing but character development and build up.
Pretty much.
And you finally get these payoffs. You get everything we're looking for. And for a religious film, it marries the religious aspect with being very respectful to the Catholic Church and people's beliefs, but also saying, well, if we're talking about possession, this is what this would look like, potentially. And you finally get to see some of this stuff. And it's not a lot of overt violence.
No.
It's really not gory, but it's unsettling. It's unsettling that, one, it's a little girl.
Yeah.
And this demon is making her do and say things.
Right? Why is this happening? Right.
And you finally get this old priest who's just worn down. He's like, I got to do this again. You get this priest who doesn't know if this is happening. He doesn't know what to do. And they finally have this awesome exorcism with almost no music, which I think just adds to it, because music can add to it, but also the lack of music can really draw you in.
That's a great point.
Because you hear so much. You see so much.
The scene is just, what's going on visually is just so like amazing to look at.
And you're also cold.
Freezing cold room they're in.
They're freezing, you're freezing, and you're watching this wondering what is going to happen. Like, is Father Marin going to make it? You know, what is going to happen to Reagan? And it just finally builds and builds and builds, and then boom, you know, when we finally get to the resolution, it's like, it feels like you haven't taken a breath in about 45 minutes, because you just, at that point, audiences didn't know what to expect.
No, they had no idea.
The end of the film is great because it doesn't have this over-the-top sort of Hollywood ending. It does just kind of end, and there's no massive shot of them overcoming this demon or whatever. It's a down ending, but it's also a relief.
Yeah, it was relief, big time.
And it's one of those endings where you were like, okay, finally, okay, we've made it. And I think it fits the tone for the movie. There's nothing about this film that feels out of place. And I feel that the action at the end, if you want to call it action, but the events of the end of the film mirror the tension that had been building. It mirrors the feelings that we had. We're completely invested in what has been going on. And I think it just, we end up having one of the most satisfying endings to one of the scariest films ever. It even kind of ends on a lighthearted note, which I think we kind of needed at that point in the movie.
I think so. So we did all these great scenes that we talked about, right? You all recognize where we are. So before we finish what we're talking about here, we move on. Tell me about, set jetters that you do, and also where does everybody find all the cool stuff that you're up to?
Yeah, I love using the Set Jetters app. It's a movie location app where we can come here to Georgetown and open up the app and look at the scene, and you can take a picture of the exact angle from the movie. You can get information about the area or the location. You can find other fans and communicate with them. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love adding scenes. Anyone can use it. You can use it from home. You don't have to be on location to use it.
Love it.
But it is one of the best things. You can find me anywhere online. You can just look my name up. I'm always out there doing Blair Witch stuff, movie location stuff, George Romero Foundation events and everything. So I'm always doing movie stuff no matter where you find me. I always end up somewhere that you don't expect.
I love it. Matt Blazi, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
We got a lot more stuff to cover, though, so stick with us, guys. We're not done. So we're still talking lots of Exorcist because this is our episode, which is a lot of fun. You guys know Larissa Staszak. She's been on the show. She's an author. She's been on a couple different episodes with us. Our live Friday the 13th, she was on as well. We did something really, really cool about a year ago, August 2024,
August
right?
2024, yes.
You actually turned me on to this. You told me there was an archive, I should know these things, at Georgetown University with stills and photos, movie placards, cards, you name it, you could get access to. So I started digging around and we found it and we met up here and we went to the archives. So tell everybody how amazing that was.
Oh my gosh, it was really cool just holding the memorabilia from the first and a little bit from the third movie.
Yep.
So there were things like Polaroids taken from on set, negatives, ads for extras for the film, was it the basketball game? There are pictures from the.
There was the basketball game. They talked about what was it, like the demons versus. I forget what there was some funny name for it, I guess, and it was like a charity game for the movie, of course. That was really cool. I'd forgotten about that, but yeah, it was. I mean, literally like the negatives. That with these actual stills, we had the white gloves and everything. I think, right?
Preserve it.
Exactly, and we were in there, and there was actually a staff member like present with us. Like they really guarded this stuff.
Yeah.
I think they had a copy of like the VHS. I think old signs they had. What else did they have? Didn't they have like pay receipts?
They did. I think from the third film. So,
yep,
yes.
Receipts from working with different groups. That was. What was your favorite thing you think during that whole thing? For
me, it was probably the Polaroids. I believe it was from the scene when the priest looks up and the light is coming down. The infamous scene you see in some of the DVD cases.
Right.
So just seeing those Polaroids from that behind that scenes, everyone's got their coffee or whatever they were drinking, and what's the actress who played the mother's name?
Ellen Burstyn.
Ellen Burstyn. I know there were some photos of her on set. So just seeing those behind the scenes, which are not available to the public.
Yeah.
So.
For me, it was, because I'm all about the set and the production, it was being able to, I wasn't around when they shot this movie, and I know that corner so well. But to see those photos, to see the set there, the crew there, that night, late at night, they shot this like overnight, I guess. And, to see, that iconic scene when she opens the door and Father Merrin is there with the hat and he's in shadow, and to see the shot, like you talked about, the picture, with actually the lights up and the crew, and it's like, okay, this is how they actually made this. This is amazing. I really can't imagine finding out about this film like right now and being like, oh, they're going to shoot this. I mean, I would camp out. I would literally bring a sleeping bag and probably wait for this, and I would just sit there all night and watch them shoot this film. So to see that in the old, technology was just amazing, and yeah, that was so much fun to do. And
I believe they had some faxes on there as well.
I think they did.
From Friedkin and
studio. All the thank you letters.
And the thank you letters
from Warner Brothers. So like, thank you so much, Georgetown University.
As well.
Yeah. So that was amazing. I wish we could have posted stuff, but because so much of the stuff belongs. What was the deal? Because it belongs to different people.
I don't remember if it was.
You would need permission from each person because it's part of the collection, I guess, something like that.
Yeah, it was under copyright, so we couldn't take pictures and share them with the public.
Right.
But we could take a look at the archives.
I do wonder how many people are aware of that, because I had literally no idea. I had assumed there was something here, but I just never guessed that it was actually like publicly accessible. How did you even find out?
It was a random Google search. There was,
Is that why you found that?
I can't quite remember what I Googled, but it might have been something like Exorcist Georgetown, but I found it, and I found you online because you were giving the tours, and we had talked a bit or messaged a bit, and I said, that they have some archives here. So
I said, okay, boom, now I got to find. And I emailed that woman, and I remember asking her something. She said, you're the expert, so you ought to know. I was like, well, you guys have all this stuff. I don't have any of this stuff. So
I believe sometimes they put this stuff on exhibit as well.
That's right. She did say there was an exhibit, but where would it be? At the library? Do you remember where they were saying it would be?
It might have been the library, but
okay.
It might say again on Google. So.
No, that was really fascinating stuff to see that, because, and I think we did see everything, because they're like boxes and boxes, and they kept bringing out this and bringing out that. And you feel like you're privy to this special, unique look at stuff. And some of that stuff was, I guess, some of it is online, so you can actually go and look online at a lot of these. I wouldn't know if it's a lot, but there is a good bit of photos, I think, and material to look at. I think online, right? Through the library?
There might be a few that are digitized and archived.
Because I think there is enough stuff. Like if you search, because, I think they made more became available for Exorcist 3 because they had more technology to put it out there and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, the sets and just having all that, and the fact those stills are still around, those negatives are still around.
And there's so many of them, and there's like, what, 5 boxes worth of all this?
There was so much stuff of that. There was so much. I'm tempted to go back again. I wonder how often. I think I remember asking her, is there a surge in like October when people want to come and see this stuff? Because the spooky season, do you want to see more of it? So I would encourage everyone to go check that out. I think it was, and I wish I could remember now, was it through georgetown.edu? How did we get there? I don't even remember anymore.
That was a whole year ago.
Yeah, I know. My memory has faded me since.
I might have been on the Georgetown, or was it not Riggs? Riggs Library.
Wow,
is the
in your
original.
library. Yeah, you may be able just to go to that. We'll link something in there for you guys to take a look at if you want to see it for sure. I would highly recommend it. And they may also do screenings in Gaston Hall, maybe of the film. I think I want to say.
If they do, that would be cool to see on location.
Which is part of this thing too. So, yeah, that part of it, love that. Check that out if you guys want to see that, because I think you will be impressed. So I think about, all that stuff that we saw, of course, the media stuff. Think about this film, The Exorcist, in other media, right? You're an author. So like the famous novel, and then Legion by Blazi, Part 3. Like, what are your thoughts on this film in other media, like appearances and things like that?
Well, I have to say, I didn't see The Exorcist until I was 14. I was first introduced to it in a way when I was about 5 or 6 because of the show Dinosaurs in the 90s. Oh my
God, the ABC show Dinosaurs. Not the mama, right?
Yes, that's the one.
Yes.
There was an episode called The Terrible Twos, I believe it was season 4.
Okay.
Where the baby turns 2 years old and becomes possessed.
How do I not know about this episode? I watched the show when I was a kid, but I did not remember this episode. That's amazing.
Maybe before you saw The Exorcist.
Oh my God.
So it was really a funny parody they could get away with. So they were saying the power of rice compels you to try to get him to eat because he didn't want to eat food.
That's good. That's good.
Instead of The Exorcist, it was the babysitter, and they have the light shining in.
God.
It's worth a watch. Go check it out on Disney Plus.
Oh my God, Disney Plus.
So that's one of the main ones I can think of.
Have you? No, I haven't. Have you read Legion, the third book? I never read it.
I have not.
Okay. I don't know much about that one.
Is it very similar to the? You know, if it's similar to the third movie?
Very. Yeah, I think that part is. I think that part is. But I also think about like parts in the book, like for instance, I think we talked earlier, the spider walk scene.
Oh my gosh.
That's in the book, the original book, and it's not in the original film. They shot it. They didn't put it in there. That scene is so freaking scary.
It is. That was the one scene that really scared me when I first saw the movie, and
yes.
was it the director's cut when the first
version you've never seen, they called it.
Okay, because that was the first
one I'd ever seen. They
re-released
it in 2000. That's when I went to see it in the theater.
That must have really scared everyone who hadn't seen it before.
Man. That scene is, because she like barfs the blood at the end, yeah, it's fantastic, but it's because they're all in the room, like, and they're just like, they all turn and like, what is going on? And it's just like, oh my God.
Now, I believe the reason they didn't have it originally is because there were wires, and they couldn't really hide the wires because this was the early 70s.
All practical effects, so everything was done practical, yeah. Yeah, everything had to be in camera. Oh my goodness. So, media, talking about that, what about, did you ever see part 2?
I did see part 2.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen part 2 as well. It is listed as genuinely not just one of the worst movies, like horror. It's regarded as one of the worst movies ever made. It is truly a piece of garbage.
I heard that people were very upset when it came out. Yeah. So even back then, I believe it's the end. The house blows up, and I remember watching it saying, "Oh no, you got a nice view of Arlington behind the house blows up."
How about that? What about? There was a TV series, yeah?
Yes, I have not seen the TV series, and I haven't seen Dominion or whatever.
Nope. What about the latest one?
I didn't see that.
She's like 90 something. She's like 90 and she's in the film, right?
Ellen Bernstein, yes. I saw that one, and it started off good, and I thought it kind of unraveled.
I never saw it.
The soundtrack is really good, though. I think whoever did the soundtrack understood the assignment.
Okay.
There's one time when they start doing Tubular Bells, and it's very slow and with a few notes, and it gets more melodic as it goes along. I think it's when they first introduced Ellen Bernstein. So that was cool, and the rest of the movie just didn't do much.
I haven't seen it, and I kind of have a feeling of there's just kind of certain films that don't need any more film. We agree part 3 is terrific, but it's like a different movie almost. It really is kind of its own film in a way.
Plus, Blazi wrote it. I mean, well, he wrote the book, so it's all based on the original author.
But a lot of it too, that was also, I think he wanted to make. There weren't things he loved about the original film that he wanted to get his hands in, so he kind of made this for himself in a way. But besides that, I'm kind of with Jaws like this, where Jaws is the shark movie. I don't need any more shark movies. The Exorcist is a possession movie. I don't need any more of them.
Right.
I don't need any more sequels for them. I don't need. I kind of like stay away from them in a way. But so I don't know. But you said that the recent one was okay. Parts of it were okay then.
A couple parts, or at least the music.
Then the wheels fell off it.
So
kind of thing. Okay.
It kind of detracted, it seemed like, from the message from the original.
What about Blatty as your writer. What about him as a writer? Like, wasn't he writing comedy before he wrote this?
He was writing different genre. I believe he was advised not to write horror.
Yeah.
I don't know if they thought it would be career-ending, but clearly that's what he's known for now, is The Exorcist.
Yeah.
I believe he had... he was inspired to write because he wanted to write a spiritual story and get people...
Because he was a student. He went to Georgetown.
Yeah, he wanted to bring people Christianity or some... and then I think he also had watched Rosemary's Baby and thought, I could do something better than this.
Ira Levin's
that was also
book.
part of it.
Did you ever read Rosemary's Baby?
I have not. I haven't even seen the movie. That's on my to-watch list.
You got to read the book, and both are great. Both are really good. Yeah, I think that, novel-wise, I think it's important. I'm trying to think of any other media for it. I mean, I don't know. There was like the series we mentioned, things like that, but...
Of Exorcism movies?
Yeah, of Exorcist. And then, of course, so many just other, what was the one?
I would say The Exorcism of Emily Rose is one I really like.
Yeah, and didn't Eli Roth, he was a producer on The Last Exorcism. Did you ever see that? It was like the found footage version of like an Exorcist movie.
I had some issues with found footage. I'm like, stop shaking the camera.
Besides Blair Witch, though, because we love Blair Witch, right?
Oh, we do love Blair Witch. People love Blair Witch are awesome.
Make no mistake, we love that. But yeah, that was okay too. But again, I have that same thing like with Jaws, where I don't need, this is the ultimate movie for this topic. I think I just need just that. So, how would you write your Exorcist book?
How would ooh.
Here's a check for $3 million. Write me an Exorcist book.
Okay. Ooh. You got me on the spot here. I don't know.
Come on, we got a deal here. I'm with a publishing company. Let's go.
I do like the idea of the religious themes in it.
Okay.
Exorcism movies kind of bother me. I'm getting better about it. I mean, I love the Conjuring franchise.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've watched The Exorcist.
You saw the new one?
I did. I just saw it yesterday.
Okay.
How I would write it.
I put you on the spot. I know.
You did?
I know.
I always
like
books with a different twist. So I would try to find some way to add a different twist to it, or put it in a different setting, or maybe even a period piece or something. I don't know.
Okay, interesting. I just love the fact that everything got set here, and I think it's just so cool that you're able to shoot everything here, so we can come and see all these great places.
Yes.
So this is awesome. I'm glad we took this little break from our recap to talk about all the stuff involved and all the stuff that we did. So for everyone out there who wants to know more about what you're doing, where do they find you and what you're doing?
Okay, well, I'm an author. I go by Larissa Staszak. You can find my work on Amazon, and I also wrote a interactive Blair Witch story for Lionsgate. That's on the Dorian app.
Yep.
Thank you. So yeah, on Instagram, the Midnight Creative 05 is my handle.
And watch our episode that we posted on Beasts of the East.
Yes.
Tell them about what we did for that. For AwesomeCon.
We went to AwesomeCon. We were with Matt Blazi and Neil Cohen.
Yeah.
And we were discussing Beasts of the East. So monsters on the East Coast. We got Bunny Man. Mothman might have been brought up at some point.
Old House Woods. We talked about filming Chessie, haunted places, locations. We had a blast. I was overwhelmed. I thought we were on 5 p.m. And I was like, well, no one's going to show up. And we sat down and we were like, there's 200 people here.
It was a full room. People were standing in the back. I don't know if I'd ever had a room that big.
We had SRO, man. We really did. So we recorded. Check that out on the website. It's on the YouTube episode as well. So, okay, well, awesome. Thank you for coming on. This is great. But we still have a few more places for you guys to check out before we're done with this episode. So, you all seen this movie, you know exactly where we are, 3600 Prospect Street, and you know this was the scene at the end of the film. Not quite the end, but almost there, when Father Merrin gets out of the cab right in front of us here, turns around, that iconic shot of him getting out of the cab. He pulls up, he walks over to the house, and he starts talking about
What the hell? Why didn't you invite me to this? You're doing your extravaganza on The Exorcist, and we've been talking about The Exorcist for how many years now, and you're not even going to invite me to your Exorcist. You're not even going to invite me to your Exorcist video. What are you doing, Matt? Who are you talking to instead of me, Matt? What's going on?
And we're back. So my friend Tara Garwood, who I
everyone
should have invited to come join me, is here with us. But isn't this great? Thanks for joining us, Tara, on this episode.
Of course. You know I love the show.
You guys love Tara, obviously, former co-host with the most.
Peeps.
So while we're here, let's talk Exorcist, right?
Okay, let's do it.
So how great is that final scene? Father Merrin never gets out of the cab, bathed in the light. So I was just talking earlier with Larissa about we were in the archives and we got to see the actual photos of the set the night they shot this scene.
Okay.
Unbelievable. Like to see those photos.
Yeah.
Right? Unbelievable. The way they had these lit, they had giant cranes and everything. And so we should go check out more. Like, let's go look at it, right?
Let's talk about it.
So, and remember, this was an iron gate.
Right.
This was not a big black fence like
right.
this. So this was like a low, like an iron gate that was here, I think, in that scene. And there's other scenes in the film. They kind of come. Remember, they're carrying her at one point when they're to the hospital. And they're trying to cover her.
Yeah. They're carrying her out. Yeah.
It's scary.
And then I know when they did the steps, which is a little later in the scene, but that they had to build a front for the house here too. So that must have been really fascinating.
There's a facade. Yep. So they built the facade out here, obviously, to come out because the actual entrance of the house is really back that way. So they would do that because for him, obviously, to fall out the window, obviously that's not going to happen this way.
Right.
So this scene is amazing because this is when it all starts to happen. The famous scenes of the door opening, him arriving in the cab, and then I love, the freezing cold room.
Oh yes,
which is great because the way they had
the lights are so hot.
So
how are they going to get that cold?
They would light it, and of course the lights were so hot. They have to shut the production down for 5, 6, 7 hours, let everything cool down. Cranked the room back up to 10 below zero. Yep. And then they had to shoot it quick because they had to get it done.
And I heard one time when they were doing that, they came back in and there was actually snow on the whole set, on the floor and the bed and stuff.
They had professional refrigeration units in there.
Yeah.
So
wild.
That would be amazing to do that. Because it's not CGI's breath. That is their breath. They are in that freezing cold
they are
room.
really. And although there was apparently when she does the head spin, I think it was the cinematographer made a joke that we should have the breath as her head spins around, and of course then the other guys on the crew are like, oh, we're making that happen. That has to happen.
Oh yeah.
So that you can see there's a little breath, and it makes it look so much more real.
It's great. It's great
when they're doing that bit. So,
and I love, the exorcism scene itself is amazing, right? Because, he's talking about mixing lies with the truth, and she does the voice of his mother, and why you
and the woman who did the voice.
So talk about Mercedes McCambridge, who does the exorcist woman's voice,
so
who does the demon's voice.
Mercedes McCambridge, y'all.
Yeah.
I love this as someone who also does voice acting. Yeah. I love this so much. So she really wanted the voice to be realistic and to be really scary. So she decided that first she needed to be in the chair tied up with tied around her neck particularly so that it would sound throttled. Yeah. But she also was this voice calls for cigarettes, raw eggs, and whiskey. However, she was a recovering alcoholic.
Oh my God.
So Mercedes insisted that her priest come and be there to counsel her while she was doing the recordings and drinking whiskey to make her voice sound right. But she didn't, she didn't want to fall back off the wagon, I guess. So she was trying to
on the wagon, or I don't remember.
You're on the wagon
when you're
and then
sober?
you fall off the wagon.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she didn't want to fall off the wagon. So she had him to counsel her while she was doing this.
God.
And then also she originally didn't want to be credited.
Really?
But because she wanted everyone to believe in the reality of this was Reagan's voice, that this was really Reagan's voice. And so she didn't want to be credited, but I guess later, and I'm assuming it's because it got so popular, later she sued to get her credit.
Yeah.
So, which is funny, because I feel like she probably, if she had said no to begin with, been the one to say no, she could have just asked and been can you just credit me? But
stupid.
I guess maybe because of the, logistics and the legality, she had to sue. So, but let's get down to talking about the sort of end of the scene, because I have something I want to show you at the stairs.
Yes.
We're almost there.
Let's go. I'm ready. That is amazing. So we're pretty much almost at the end, right?
Right.
So pretty much right here is where you would have seen. So Father Marin, don't forget, the older priest.
Right, he dies first.
And then, of course, Karras comes in.
Like a heart attack or something. And she's in the corner of the bed, watching, giggling.
And that is a terrifying scene. And he's just what? And that's when he grabs her and he just is hitting her and smacking her.
Right.
And he yells, come into me,
you bastard, or whatever, yeah.
And she does, and takes him over.
And he gets the face for a second.
He gets the face, the demon's face.
And then he pulls it in and just blasts for the window.
On that facade, and he probably lands right about this landing.
Right about here, rolls
he's
down.
Toast. But before we see that bottom,
here's
you
the
had
moment.
some stuff to talk about
here.
So
this spot right here, if you can see it, as you can see, it has some graffiti on it.
A lot more than usual, actually.
Yeah. But what I noticed when I was watching this earlier this week, again, for the first time I noticed that it said in red, in bright red, what's it called? Spray paint. In bright red spray paint, it says "Fight Pig."
Okay.
Fight pigs, and so
never even paid attention to that.
I'd never noticed it before, and I finally noticed it, and I start looking. I'm like fast forward. I'm rewinding, pausing, rewinding, pausing. I'm like, what does it say? Because I could only see the pigs at first. So I finally found it, and my husband was watching it with me, and he's like, it was graffiti. It's DC, and I'm like, no, not in this movie. So finally, I looked it up, and I found people talking about it, and apparently, what it was is there are a couple places where the demon says stuff about pigs or calls people pigs, stuff like that. And it is a reference to the biblical story where Jesus exorcised a demon from a human into a herd of pigs. And then I think they run off a cliff or something and die. And so it's basically exactly what Karras did, right? He made himself the pigs.
He sacrifices himself.
And it says fight pigs. So
wow. Okay, that is amazing. I have never even heard this.
It's literally there for like a second and a half, maybe.
Okay, this is like breaking news, Exorcist news you're giving me right now.
It is all over the internet. I found it. I found it on Reddit, so.
And it must be
other people have noticed, but I am not the first to find it.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I thought it was so cool.
That's amazing. Should we go to the bottom?
So he comes to the bottom, right? Yeah. And then what happens there?
Well, you'll get there a lot faster if I push you if you'd like.
Oh, yes, let's do it.
That's a great idea.
All right.
This is it, right? This is where Father Damien Karras lands.
Father Karras' end.
He is given his
ignominious end.
Given his last rites. He passes away. The ambulances show up. And at the end, with that final scene where Reagan comes out and she's all scarred up and sees, was it Father Dyer, I guess, and gives him the kiss with the medal. Yeah. They get in the car. Car drives down the street.
Father Dyer, who was an actual priest.
Yes.
As was, I can't remember which the other one was, but there was another actual priest.
I believe that scene when he's giving the last rites, he's very shaky. I had heard Freaky came over and battered him to kind of just
to get
amp him up. Yeah, to get him in that mindset.
Oh, no, I did hear that too. I heard it a little wrong though, but that's what I heard too. I heard that he smacked him to get him like shaken because he had no acting experience and he wasn't. Yeah, I heard that. I definitely heard that one too.
So then, Reagan and Chris McNeil, they drive away. Fiend, as they say. Yeah. We're done. So my cool connection, besides all the fun stuff of all the stuff I've done here is, I was here on October 30th, 2015, when they dedicated the plaque that's on that wall there. It was amazing. The mayor was here, city council, media. William Friedkin and Blazi were here signing when they were both still around. I had signed my DVD, and they had all these lights. And it was set up, and it was amazing. I'll post some photos for you guys on that. So that's kind of like, I've done the Global News Canada piece, but that was like the really personal piece for me. So yeah. But like legacy-wise, like what does it mean for you?
So for me, this is, and I was too scared to watch horror movies until I was like 30. Yeah. Right? I was way too afraid to watch horror movies when I was young. But I grew up right around here. I grew up in Gaithersburg, and my mom, when I was young, had like the business, and so it took her into Baltimore and DC sometimes, and I would come with her. And every time we drove past here, she would tell me, those are the Exorcist stairs. And she would tell me the story of like this movie where the priest falls down the stairs and dies with it. He gets the demon and he falls. And she would tell me that scene. And I didn't know anything about this movie, but she would tell me that scene, and she would tell me that it was based on a true story because as we know, they say it was, which did not specifically happen here, but happened partially in Maryland, and partially somewhere else, I think. St. Louis, there we go. But so she told me how it was based on a true story. Maybe this is why I couldn't watch horror movies for 30 fucking years of my life.
That's right.
But so I was like deathly afraid of these stairs. I thought this was all real. I was scared to death.
It was like your Blair Witch for me, where I thought it was all real at first, and it terrified me to death.
Yeah, except that I was like 7. Yeah. So she was telling me about this from my very young childhood for years, and when I finally saw it, I was like, oh, that's the stair. But yeah, I heard about it all my life before I ever saw the movie, many years before.
And that's what I always tell people is, it's one of these films that I don't care if you've never seen it. I don't care if you don't even watch movies. You know what these are. You know what these are. Yep. And that's what I tell people. That you know. It's like listening to the Jaws theme. You know what that is.
Yeah.
And you know what these stairs are.
It's ubiquitous. It's universal. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
And actually, it's funny because I I was thinking about its legacy, the legacy of the movie. And, I think there were some sort of possession films before this, but none like this. And I think the way that they portrayed the possession really it was terrifying, but it also became the way that we think of possession.
It set the stand for it, right?
It set the way we think of possession in movies and the way we present it in movies now. Yeah. It also, and I had not known this, but I recently read that when they were testing, I don't know if they were testing the whole movie or just the title, but apparently a lot of people were like, they didn't know what an exorcist was.
No.
Nobody knew
in
1973 here what an exorcist was.
They had no idea.
And so they wanted them to change the name, but they didn't. And if you think about that now, who in this world, in our society, does not know what an exorcist or an exorcism is? It's all because of that movie.
That's exactly right.
It's all because of that movie.
And that is such, I think, a beautiful way to end it. So you were gracious to come today. So tell us.
Without being invited.
Yeah, well, we solved that problem. Tell us about where everyone finds you now, what you're doing, and where they can keep in touch with all the stuff you're doing.
Oh, sure. Well, I think last time I spoke to y'all, I was writing my first feature.
Yeah.
I am on what I'm pretty sure is the final draft. I'm waiting to hear from my mentors about if they think it's my final draft.
That's right.
But I think it might be. So that's nice. I'm at least very close to the end of my first feature and getting ready to start my second with some input from a producer, a low-budget horror producer. And you can find me at Terracotta Films. That's not Terracotta the clay, but TARAKATA.com, terracottafilms.com, or at Terracotta on pretty much everything.
The internets.
On the internets, on the social medias.
The social medias. And that, of course, you guys know, thescarymovieproject.com. If you want to email and talk about The Exorcist, thescarymovieproject@gmail.com.
Oh, sorry.
If you want to engage with me, go to @thescarymovieproject on Instagram. That's where I hang out. All the places. So you know what, Tara? I've got an Ouija board. If you want to come, we can go talk to Captain Howdy now. If you want.
We have a date with Captain Howdy.
Let's go do it.
The Scary Movie Project podcast. Learn more at thescarymovieproject.com.